Good morning, students. Welcome back to our economics second year classes. So as we were discussing with the few important questions for supplementary exam, as in our previous chapters, we have done with our tertiary sector, like what are the renewable sources of energy, what is LIC and what are its objectives. So today I'm going to start with one more new chapter, that is foreign sector. In foreign sector, your weightage will be 5 marks question and 2 marks question. Okay. So this foreign sector, so we will discuss with the two important questions what we are having over here. So first one is difference between balance of payment and balance of trade. So this is one question you have to prepare from this. Difference between balance of payment and balance of trade. So in foreign sector means what? It will calculate the value of imports as well as value of export. Means what is the total value of imports in the country and what is the total value of exports. The statement which includes value of imports and exports are called as balance of trade or balance of payment. Okay. So when the country is going for import and export, that is when the country is going for international trade, they will maintain like a balance sheet. Means how many goods we have imported in the country, how much of value of goods and services are exported to the other country. That statement when the country is preparing, that final statement is called as balance of payment and balance of trade. Now we will see what is the difference between these two. What are balance of payment and balance of trade? So first, let us study what is balance of trade. Balance of trade, it is the statement which takes into account the transactions arising out of exports and imports of visible items. Okay, so it takes into account only those transactions it takes into account only those transactions arising out of exports and imports of visible items. Visible items means here only goods. Services are not included. Remember that point here. Balance of trade takes into account only those transactions arising out of exports and imports of visible items. Visible items means goods, because services are invisible items, no? So services are not taken into account. The transactions, how much value of services are exported, how much value of services are imported. These values are not taken into consideration when balance of trade is prepared. So what is balance of trade? It is the difference between, or you can write it as, it is the difference between value of goods exported and imported. Value of goods exported and imported. Okay. So here we can say balance of trade takes into account only those transactions arising out of export and import of visible item. That means it does not consider the exchange of invisible items. Invisible items such as services. Services like shipping, insurance, banking, payment of interest and dividend, expenditure by tourists. These all services are not included. Only visible items, the goods values are included, or we can also call balance of trade as difference between value of goods and services that are exported and imported. Okay, now this is balance of trade. Now let us see what is balance of payment. In trade, we include only the transaction of goods, whereas invisible items are also included in our balance of payment. Like you can see the balance of payment indicates it includes all transactions, including the invisibles. Okay, so you can see balance of payment. It includes all transactions of exports and imports. Exports and imports of both goods and services. Means invisible items are also included in this. So balance of payment, which includes all the transactions. So balance of payment is equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Means it includes all the transactions which give rise to national income. It includes all transactions which gives rise to national income. Okay, in our national income, when we are calculating C plus I plus G plus X minus M, we calculate now, right? So that means all the transactions, including both goods and services, are included in the balance of payment. Okay, so this way we have balance of trade and balance of payment. Now, when we say that when the exports are, okay, just see here, when our, yes, remember this one, when our exports are equal to imports, we have balanced balance of payment. You have to write these points in introduction. Okay. When exports are greater than import, mean when exports are high and imports are less, we have surplus balance of payment. Surplus means our export values are greater than import values. Next you have when our exports are less than import. Our export values are less than our import. Means when we are exporting, income is less, but importing expenditure is more. So we call it as deficit balance of payment. Okay, so remember here, when our exports are equal to import, we call it as balanced balance of trade. See, when our deficits are equal, balanced. When our deficit, when we have exports greater than import, we have surplus. And when our exports are less than import, we have deficit. So these way our balance of payments are prepared in the country. Clear? So what do you mean by balance of trade? Balance of trade takes into account only those transactions which are exports and import of visible items, that is only goods. Invisible items are not included. Okay, it is the difference between value of goods exported and imported. Whereas balance of payment, it includes all transactions of export and import of both goods and services. That means our balance of payment includes both visible items as well as invisible items. So it includes all transactions which give rise to our national income. So when we have export and import equal, we have balanced balance of payment. When our exports are greater than our imports, surplus balance of payment. And when our exports are less than our import, we have deficit balance of payment. So this introduction you will write. Now we'll write the difference between balance of trade and balance of payment. Balance of trade and balance of payment. Okay, so now let us see the difference here. It is a broad and comprehensive concept. First, you see what is balance of trade. It is a narrow concept. Why? Because we are considering only visible items. Invisible items are not considered. Transactions are not taken. Whereas balance of payment, it is broad and comprehensive concept. It is broad and comprehensive concept. This is first different. Next difference, it includes only visible items. Whereas in our balance of payment, it includes all transactions related to visible, invisible, and capital transfer. It includes all transactions related to visible, invisible, and capital transfers. Okay, see the second point of difference here. What is the first point of difference? It is a narrow concept. Why it is a narrow concept? Because we consider only visible items. Whereas balance of payment is a broad and comprehensive concept because we include both visible as well as invisible items. So in balance of trade, it includes only visible items. Whereas in balance of payment, it includes all transactions related to visible, invisible, and capital transfer. Next, it can be favorable or unfavorable. That means we have deficit balance of trade or surplus balance of trade or balanced balance of trade. Whereas balance of payment, it always balances itself. One more difference here. Our balance of trade can be either favorable or unfavorable. Whereas our balance of payment, it always balances itself. Next point of difference, our balance of trade is equals to, how we calculate? Net earnings of export, net earnings of export minus net payment of imports. What we earn from exports minus what we pay for imports. Whereas balance of payment is equals to current account plus capital account plus or minus balancing item. So another point of difference, balance of payment is equals to current account plus capital account plus or minus balancing item. That's why we say it always balances itself. So see the difference between balance of trade and balance of payment over here. Balance of trade is a narrow concept, whereas balance of payment is a broad and comprehensive concept. Balance of trade includes only visible items, whereas balance of payment include visible, invisible, and capital transfers. Balance of trade can be favorable or unfavorable, whereas balance of payment is always balances itself. And the formula, balance of trade is equals to net earnings of export minus net payment of import, right? Whereas balance of payment is current account plus capital account plus or minus balancing item. So you can see here, what is balance of trade and what is balance of payment? Balance of trade, it takes into account only those transactions arising out of exports and imports of visible items, that is only goods. Invisible items are not included. Difference between value of goods exported and imported. Whereas balance of payment, it includes all transactions of exports and imports of both goods and services. That means it includes both visible items as well as non-visible, invisible items, right? So when you have exports equals to imports, balance of trade. So like that we have favorable or unfavorable. Next, you can see the difference between these two. Balance of trade is a narrow concept, whereas balance of payment is a broad and comprehensive concept. Balance of trade includes only visible items, whereas balance of payment includes both visible, invisible, as well as capital transfers. Balance of trade can be favorable or unfavorable, means that we have surplus balance of trade, deficit balance of trade, or balanced balance of trade. Whereas our balance of trade payment, it always balances itself. Balance of trade, how we calculate? It is the net earnings of export. When we export, we earn some income, and when we import, we make some payments. So net earnings of export minus net payment of import. Balance of payment is equals to current account plus capital account plus or minus balancing item. Okay. So this will be your 5 marks question from this chapter, foreign sector. Difference between balance of trade and balance of payment. So your next 5 marks question from this chapter, that is role of international trade in Indian economy. Your 5 marks important question. Role of international trade on Indian economy. So when India is going for international trade, what advantages or what benefits India got from this participating in this international trade? So here, for every economy, international trade helps for economic development. So we can say here, international trade plays an important role for development of an economy. International trade plays a vital role for economic development of every economy. So in India, how it is an important? First one is comparative cost advantage. So first benefit, first importance we have from this international trade is that generally we can compare the cost to make the product in our country or to get the product from outside the country. To see which one is cheaper cost, then we can go for that product. So generally you see here, foreign trade helps to produce those commodities which have cheaper cost than others. It results in less cost of production. If all the countries adopt this procedure to produce the goods which have less comparative cost, will lead to availability of goods at lower price. Okay, so here, how we get the comparative cost advantage? It helps in, foreign trade helps in producing, foreign trade helps in producing those goods which are comparatively cheaper cost than others. So when our cost of production is less, obviously the goods are available at low price in the country. So this foreign trade is helping us to understand whether if we make the product, cost of production is less, or if we import the product, cost of production is, our cost is less. So by comparing these two, if our cost of production is cheaper, then we will make that product in our country so that that product will be available at low price in the country for all the people. So this comparison is possible with foreign trade. So India also specialized in the production of those commodities which have comparative cost advantage. Second importance is market expansion. Market expansion. So foreign trade increases the scope for market because of domestic demand and foreign demand. So here we can say increases the scope of market. Foreign trade increases the scope of market because of domestic demand and foreign demand. Because of domestic demand and foreign demand. That means when we are going for foreign trade, when a country is going for international trade, the market is expanded. That means they should supply the products for domestic purpose as well as for international purpose. So that way, foreign demand and domestic demand will be there. If the production of good increases, average cost declines, price of good decline. As a result, consumers will get different variety of goods, both in quantity and quality. So, as the demand in foreign and domestic market increases, as we are expanding, so our goods are made available in the domestic market as well as our goods are made available in the foreign market. So when more production is done, cost of production decreases, right? When the cost of production is decreasing, the goods are available to the consumer at low cost. When cost of production decreases, low price, the goods are available to the consumer. And also through foreign trade, variety of goods are available to the consumers, both quantitatively as well as qualitatively. Okay, so this advantage we have from the international trade. Agriculture development. Through foreign trade, we can through foreign trade, agriculture development is possible because India is exporting rice, cotton, fruits and vegetables to other countries. The export of goods make farmers more prosperous and it inspires the spirit of development in them. So you can see here, every year, India is exporting rice, cotton. India exports rice, cotton, fruits, vegetables to other countries. It increases the income levels of the farmer. And we can say Indian economy is an agricultural economy. Agriculture is the backbone for our Indian economy. So, as India is exporting, farmer, when they are producing the goods, his income levels also increases, which helps in the prosperity of the rural people. Next benefit we have from foreign trade is competition. Competition. International trade discourages the formation of local monopolies. Local producers cannot exploit the consumers because of fear of cheap imports. Some local firms may create monopoly and charge very high prices. So here we can say when international trade is there, it discourages local monopolies. Right? Local monopolies. Who is a monopoly? Who is a single seller? Who can decide the price according to him, and he can put the price high also to get more profits. So when international trade is done, foreign companies and domestic companies make the product which are made available to the public. So there is no chance of local monopolies. So here we can say international trade discourages the formation of local monopolies. So because when local monopoly is charging high price, we can import the good from other countries where the cost of product will be less. So consumers can get the product at less price compared to the product which is given by local monopoly. This benefit we have from international trade. Then trade policy. When international trade is done, trade and commerce, like India is exporting textile and spices, whereas the country followed the socialistic pattern, resulted in protectionism and heavy regulations on foreign companies. So average tariffs were more than 200%. So like these quantitative restrictions and the stringent restrictions were imposed on foreign investments. So through LPG policy, these trade restrictions have been removed. So we can say here trade reforms helped India to increase the GDP ratio from 15% to 35% between 1990 and 2005. So here we can say trade policy. India's trade to GDP ratio increased from 15% to 25% by the year, 15% to 35% by the year 2005. Right? Means the trade ratio to GDP ratio. GDP is what? The total value of goods and services we calculate in the country. Right? So the trade to GDP ratio increased from 15% to 35% by the year 2005. Also, the quantitative restrictions on imports were eliminated. And here quantitative restrictions on imports where